And I would like to know why you can never get to the end of a rainbow.
It's the worst disaster in Iowa.
What are your top 3 movies that involve weather?
Welcome to Weathered Questions, where we answer the questions on your radar.
Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of Weathered Questions. Myself, meteorologist Kaj O'Mara, alongside meteorologist Jan Reichard. And since we talked to you all last, boy, oh boy, do we have a big system in the center of the country right now. And we'll just be very open and transparent about it, that we're recording this episode as this storm is going on, Jan.
Mm-hmm.
So It's a substantial one for sure. And by the time this hits the airwaves, if you're listening to us on the radio, or by the time it hits the podcast platforms, if you're listening to us that way, or YouTube, if you're listening to us that way, the storm will largely be in the ocean already at that point. But it's been very, very impactful so far. What a flip. The pattern totally flipped, Jan.
Yeah, it really did. And, we'll take this as a win for the meteorologists in that a couple weeks ago, because we kind of, look ahead as we're stacking these shows and the questions that we're going to put in. And we had actually talked about 3-4 weeks ago, hey, we're probably going to want to put some, some questions in that are related to that winter storm, concept, just because we figured that that's where that flip would start happening. And here we are. So look at that. Weather wins again.
You got it. Well, and there's been a little bit of angst out there that I've noticed. A lot of times we see this with large systems, but especially ones that impact a lot of people, such as this one. So the winter storm warning that the National Weather Service put out stretches 2,000 miles. Normally, I wouldn't really hone in on a stat like that, but it's a significant stat. And certainly what happens is you get all these meteorologists in a room, and some people have different opinions about the way to do things. And some got very spirited about it, and we get it. You don't want to put specifics out there at that kind of distance, a week to 10 days out. But to your point that you accurately said, Jan, we knew at the very least a cold flip was coming.
Yeah.
And that's where extended modeling can provide value for society, where we can see some of these, what we call teleconnections and air masses moving around. And we know at the very least, all right, well, it's going to get darn cold for a while. It's probably going to generate some kind of storm. We just don't know exactly where yet. Stay tuned. In a week, we'll be able to know more. That's kind of how you approach that.
Absolutely.
So, it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. That is for sure. But we encourage everybody to submit questions that may be on your mind. We do want to know what's on your radar. Thank you very much to Paul, by the way, for engaging with us in our email at weatheredquestions@gmail.com. You can recall from one of our prior episodes, Jan, we talked about snow being an insulator.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely correct. And he just wanted to send us some ground truth reports that that's indeed correct.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
Based on his dog in his backyard. So, yes, that's absolutely correct. So we thank Paul for his engagement. And we also thank everybody for leaving reviews, positive, negative, whatever they may be, and telling your friends and family about the program as well. We went through some stats earlier this year that it blew us both away. So we really appreciate that for sure as we move forward here this week.
Yep, we really do appreciate your support. And one of the other new things that we're doing this year, we're talking Cloud of the Week in every episode. So let's kick that off here. This week we're talking cumulus clouds, which are arguably, one of the 3 main clouds, and arguably I think the favorite of the main clouds, because they have some fun characteristics. So a cumulus cloud is going to be the ones, as I introduce it when I'm doing my school visits, with the first and second graders. If you're laying outside on a nice summery day and you're laying in the grass looking at, that one looks like a giraffe and that one looks like an elephant, you're probably looking at cumulus clouds. So hopefully that kind of puts a picture in your head about what kind of cloud we're talking. But just those happy, fair weather puff balls that look like little cotton balls, those are going to be your cumulus clouds. Cumulus clouds can grow and morph into lots of variations, and we'll talk about those here in the coming weeks. But that's really the basics. It looks like a cotton ball. Just kind of a happy classic cloud that maybe you drew in your childhood drawings, or again, the ones that you're looking for shapes in the clouds. Cumulus, we've talked a lot about Latin roots of our clouds, and cumulus actually refers to the word pile in Latin. And so it's just a little pile of cloud, a little stack of cloud, lump of cloud. So
Little piece. Yep.
exactly.
Those are, I think, the most common type of clouds that you'll see when kids draw as well, when they're trying to draw weather on a landscape, or they just want to have a really cool picture. Maybe in their painting, they paint a cloud in there that's kind of puffy like that. It's extremely common. It's one of the ones we associate with the world itself. There are two small features with cumulus that you don't necessarily see with others, which is kind of fun. First part is usually they've got some flat bottoms to them. And that has to do with how the atmosphere is layered out, because that's what we call the condensation point. So the air rises up slowly, and it just condenses right there. And then sometimes you'll be walking along and you're like, oh, man, there's a lot of gray under that thing. Like, that might rain on me. Well, upon further investigation, if you put a cotton ball in front of your bedside lamp, it casts a shadow.
Yeah.
And that's all that is. It's nothing harmful. That's just the cumulus cloud casting a shadow. So that
could be said about a lot of different clouds. Like,
yeah.
I think, Kai, maybe you had the same lesson in one of your very introductory meteorology classes that I did, where one of our professors will put up a white tornado and a gray tornado, and they'll say, which one's worse? And really, it's just which side of the sun you're on for that picture. Even if it's that in that case, same tornado, or, talking about cumulus clouds, it's just what orientation you are, your viewpoint is from where the sun is and where that shadow is being cast.
Right. Yeah. And cumulus clouds also, by the way, rarely produce any sort of weather that's harmful. It's unless you had a very unique atmospheric circumstance where one of them took off and became a large tower, which then it would graduate from cumulus to a towering cumulus.
Yep.
Then maybe it'll produce something, but 99.999% of these things just float around. And then what you'll also notice, Jan, is that they're most common in the afternoon. You don't tend to see them as much in the morning, and you don't tend to see them much in the evening. They just dissipate. They're a heating of the day driven cloud. So we call them fair weather cumulus because the weather is typically fair. Nice,
exactly.
In other words.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you where the weather's not fair. Pretty much everybody is not dealing with anything fair right now.
No.
But I saw this comment even this morning, and it was on LinkedIn. And I like to think that LinkedIn is where intelligent people go to have conversations, whereas Facebook and Twitter is free for all. But I noticed a comment that was very interesting, and it was from somebody in response to one of the higher officials at the NOAA who was just giving an update on the storm and said, what's the big deal? It gets cold for a few days. You move on. You lose power. You light a lantern, whatever. Okay, so the thing that's interesting is a winter storm warning in Iowa is not a winter storm warning in Arkansas, which is not
Correct.
A winter storm warning, especially in Houston, Texas,
Yes.
or down in Dallas, Texas. It has to do with what that part of the world is acclimated to. And we had an interesting conversation yesterday at work, and it had to do with just structural buildings and what they're made to do. And the buildings down in the southern U.S., they're not made to keep cold air out. They're meant to keep the hot air out because that's typical. You go to Dallas in July, you're going to fry. There's a reason I don't go down there in the summer, period. It's just not something I want to do. It's not a sunburn I want to get. It's just the thing.
Spoken like a true Midwesterner.
I mean, really, it's just that's not what I'm all about. But at the same time, when things are constructed different, what happens? Pipes freeze, and then it's not like it's an ice cube stuck in a water bottle in your freezer that just the water doesn't move. These things blow up, and when they blow up, the city water supply keeps pumping it, and it doesn't know any better.
Yep.
And you get flooded homes, and you get a whole bunch of problems. And then on top of that, if you have ice in the area, you start having more issues with power lines and electricity. And just imagine for a second, if you're listening to us in Iowa, if you lose power for 4 days in an air mass like we've had, you'd freeze too. I mean, your pipes would freeze too. I don't care how well your house is insulated. If you have 3 or 4 days with no power in the air mass we're currently in right now, then you don't have a chance. And so I think it's worth opening your eyes to see why this is probably going to be. First off, it's going to be a huge one for the insurance industry. They're already aware of it because of the losses they're about to get. But number two, put yourself in that position for a second. Put yourself in a position where you live in a city that doesn't clear streets, that has no equipment to do that. And then put yourself in the situation of no power for 4 days with overnight lows around 0 and highs around 25. Mm-hmm. You'd be pretty darn cold. So I don't know. I find it very interesting to see that. And, from folks in the north, we kind of maybe scoff at some of those temperatures and say it's not that bad. But when you literally live differently based on your weather, it is a big deal. It is a big deal.
I think that's a really, really important point, right? Like you mentioned, maybe we would scoff at, well, it's not that cold. It's, only down to 0. It's been like that all winter here. But keep in mind, again, that this is not something that they're used to. They are not accustomed to this. That's why houses are built differently. That's why buildings are built differently, because it's not necessary. And when you're not accustomed to temperatures like that, then it impacts you all the more. That's exactly why, when you started this conversation, Kai, you mentioned how a winter storm warning is different in Iowa versus Texas versus Arkansas. Like, there are different thresholds for exactly that reason for all the different warnings that the National Weather Service and NOAA will put out. Because if we had a blanket statement all the way across the board, it wouldn't trigger the same response in different places. In fact, just yesterday, I saw something as I was scrolling through my social media that, it was somebody down south who was saying, hey, if the temperature gets below 32, that's when you need to turn your faucets on drip. And I think somebody from Minnesota, somebody from Iowa would laugh at that, because if we had our faucets on drip throughout the entire winter, which is when it's below 32 degrees, that how much water are you going through? But this is something that they need to do because they don't have the insulation, because their pipes maybe, are more outwardly exposed. And so it is a necessary thing. And even actually also just yesterday, because I was telling a family member about that, they mentioned, well, people still need to put their faucets on drip. And yeah, again, people that aren't dealing with these temperatures and this winter weather all the time absolutely do, for those rare cases where they are getting that extreme weather.
So the thing about this too is when you're talking about ice and snow, one thing I tried to make a note of at our last episode was we'd probably hit a little bit on nor'easters, and we can do that because I had to research that for a totally separate engagement before we're doing our podcast today. But one quick thing to touch on when we talk about winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories, there is one winter product that is global across the United States, and that one is the ice storm warning. And the reason for that is because of the behavior of trees and power lines. A tree in Iowa, a power line in Iowa, is probably the exact type of damage that you'd see whether it's in Iowa or in Louisiana. And so the National Weather Service out of Shreveport put this informational graphic out, which I love it. I actually wish I would have seen it before I issued the briefing to our people. But a trace to a glaze of ice, which is 1/10 of an inch or so. Slick bridges, windshields, you don't see a lot of power impact with that. 1/4 inch becomes disruptive. Isolated power outages, tree limbs, power lines sag. That's the threshold for an ice storm warning. 1/4 inch of ice or more. And that's a global thing. That's across the whole U.S., whether it's in Texas or whether it's in Iowa. When you get to a 1/2 inch of ice, now you're really into this danger category because your power outages go up exponentially. And you have moderate damage to trees and power lines. And then once you get to 1 inch, you can actually see the power poles begin to go down with very destructive, long-lasting power outages. And just to, put a visual on this. So NOAA's national blend of models back last week had pegged eastern Arkansas, southwest Tennessee, and northern Mississippi in a risk of significant icing. Same with northeast Georgia. And the Weather Service is forecasting a large swath of a 1/2 inch to 1 inch from pretty much all of northern Louisiana through the entire northwest half of Mississippi, and even getting close to Nashville, Tennessee. So again, you're listening to this and we don't know the outcome of this yet because we're recording this before the storm hits. But even half of that puts you in the dangerous category.
Yeah.
And if it actually is up to 1 inch in spots, and then you have an Arctic air mass behind it, you have huge problems. I mean, huge problems. So that just kind of gives you an indication of how these products work. But yeah, the ice storm warning is a global product. It is the exact same everywhere in the country, whereas the other ones can adjust and can flux along the way.
And just to rehash that, places down south don't have snowplows that have sand and salt and everything at the ready, at least in the same capacity that a lot of Midwestern or northern cities and municipalities would. So once it all falls, then the cleanup is going to take even longer and be more difficult because of that as well.
Yep, exactly. So this long duration storm is going to eventually form or morph into some type of nor'easter. Not necessarily your traditional type, because your traditional type, actually the low comes across central Florida and then goes up.
Yeah.
But there are some top nor'easters over the years that have kind of stuck out for places. And for those that are not aware, nor'easter is basically a blizzard or a snowstorm for the Northeast US. And the reason why that matters, millions and millions and millions of people live there, and millions of planes go in and out of there every year. Yep. And so we think about Philadelphia, think about New York, and if anybody's flying this week anywhere, there could still be ripple effects of this thing coming
absolutely
through. But one of the biggest ones, and we're just going to have to take everybody's word for it, was the blizzard of March of 1888. And this was written up by Dan Valley with NOAA, and 40 to 50 inches of snow across parts of New England, with gusts of 50 creating snow drifts as high as 40 feet deep. In March 1888.
In the 1880s, where... Right.
Now we get into a little more recent time. There was the Ash Wednesday storm of 1962. 42 inches of snow in Shenandoah National Park, and that was in Virginia, and they reported that snow fell as far south as Alabama with that one. 1993 storm of the century was a blizzard, effectively, that impacted 120 million people, and the air pressure was that of a Category 3 hurricane, and it was a 1 to 2 foot snow event, isolated 40-inch event with about 40 inches in Syracuse, New York, and then also had huge amounts in the higher elevations of Tennessee with that one. Get even a little bit closer. Blizzard of 96 was another 1 to 2 footer that came through there. Philadelphia, though, had 30 inches of snow, and Harrisburg had 22. And it was, I tell you, the snow swath of some of these looks really similar to this one. Nor'easter of 2016 had a 2 to 3 foot accumulation. And 2018 was what we call a bomb cyclone. And that one had, where is it? I just lost it. How much did it have?
You got too excited about the bomb cyclone that
I do know that it caused $1.2 billion worth of damage, though.
Oh, okay.
So it was huge. Yeah. 18 to 36 inches.
Oof. That
That was your general thought. So 1.5 to 3 feet of snow. There are some models really dropping down a lot of snow on this.
Yeah.
And that bomb cyclone that hit in 2018 gets us beautifully into the trivia. Yes.
It does. And with that, today's trivia question refers exactly to that. What are bomb cyclones? Why are bomb cyclones sometimes referred to as bombs or weather bombs? So you do have some answer options on this one. A, they cause explosions. B, they create thunder-like sounds. C, they move faster than other storms. Or D, the air pressure drops very quickly. So again, today's trivia question: why are bomb cyclones sometimes referred to as bombs or weather bombs? A, they cause explosions. B, they create thunder-like sounds. C, they move faster than other storms. Or D, the air pressure drops very quickly. We'll give you a few seconds to think about that. All right, hopefully you've had a chance to think about it. Why are bomb cyclones referred to as bombs or weather bombs sometimes? The answer is D. The air pressure drops very quickly. So it kind of creates just a very sudden area of very low pressure. So as you heard Kai talking through some of those nor'easters of history, it mentioned, the air pressure of a Category 3 hurricane or something like that. So that just shows you again where that air pressure drop is. One of the other things, though, I did want to talk about here before we go in too far into bomb cyclones is that answer option of A, they cause explosions, because I think that was something that was flooding social media this week.
It was, yeah. It was.
With this, the temperature drop, especially not even so much associated with the winter storm down south, but just the cold aspect to the north, was somehow, somewhere, somebody got the notion that trees would be exploding. And there is truth to the very, very small part of that a lot of times when it gets cold, you might have some cracking that you might hear. But even that, I mean, you would probably need to be like in a forest, a well forested area that you're able to hear those things. You're not just going to be walking around the street listening to trees cracking on the side of the road. It's
not like the sapling at the bus stop is going to blow up.
Correct.
It's just not going to happen.
Yes.
It's not going to happen.
So I did want to address that one, but again, bomb cyclone references bombs or weather bombs because of that air pressure drop. That is why they are called that. It happens usually there is a threshold of about 24 millibars, or that measurement of air pressure within a 24-hour period. It's just kind of the general consensus, but it just means that it's suddenly rapidly intensifying and deepening, and it gets stronger very quickly is really how to sum it up.
I was just thinking that's probably the best way to say it. It's just rapidly intensifying. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. In meteorology, there is a term out there, and we try and keep things very, very similar. So when fronts are developing, it's called frontogenesis. When cyclones are developing, it's cyclogenesis. And when cyclones are rapidly intensifying and they're not hurricanes, it's literally called bombogenesis. Yeah. And it's an actual technical term that we learn about, but they're a pretty big windy storm is what it's going to be. I mean, that's what's going to happen when you drop the air pressure that quickly. But yeah, the word bomb gets some people sometimes, and it definitely makes the social media hits go up.
Oh, absolutely. people right love to share, love to talk about it.
Yeah, no question. Well, this is one of those things too, where you'll notice that the vast majority of the bomb cyclones, they're going to happen east of the Rockies. And they're going to happen either in the northern U.S. or along the eastern seaboard. And it's because you've got that massive temperature gradient right there, because over the Atlantic, the temperatures don't move much. But if you get Arctic air to drop into the Gulf Coast and you have a low pressure system that's riding that Arctic air, you have all of a sudden about a 50 to 70 degree temperature difference over about a 500-mile span. And guess what? Low pressure systems love temperature differences, and they'll track right up there. And that's where the vast majority of nor'easters are going to wind up making that track. That's why this one this week is kind of unique in where it started and where it's going to finish. It's not necessarily the traditional nor'easter pattern, but it's still going to drop a ton of snow to a lot of people. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we are quickly running out of time here for this episode. So we are going to talk about polar vortexes, a little teaser for next week, because I think that's another thing that comes out a lot in these kinds of winter weather systems and storms, and a lot of people are curious about that. So, table it for next week, or if you're catching up on the podcast platforms, then hey, we'll have that here coming up in 3.8 on polar vortexes. But in the meantime, thanks for listening. Stay warm out there, everyone. Stay safe, and hopefully we'll get through this one, and it'll be warm before too long. We hope. Fingers crossed, right? As a reminder, if you have questions, either sparked by this episode or just natural curiosities that you want answered about weather, send us a note, weatheredquestions@gmail.com. Join the conversation. Let us know what's on your radar. Until then, stay safe.